Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into some of the most fundamental tools the policy analysts use to figure out who really wins and who loses when governments decide to step into the marketplace.
And hey, a special welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5375, Economic Analysis for Public Policy and Management. We're getting right into the readings from Section 4, all about measuring economic welfare. And that means we're talking consumer and producer surplus.
So, just so we're all on the same page, we're pulling from a few key sources today. We've got the textbook chapter, The Analysis of Competitive Markets, our course notes on the efficiency of competitive markets, and of course, the Public Policy Applications presentation slides.
Okay, so let's get to it. Let's start building our toolkit. Before we can analyze any policy, we first need a way to actually measure the economic well-being, or, the welfare, that a market creates for everybody involved.
First up, let's look at it from the buyer's side with something called consumer surplus. You know that feeling when you find something you love and it's on sale? That feeling of getting a really good deal? Well, this is basically how economists put a number on that feeling. It's all the value you get because you paid less for something than you were actually willing to pay.
And then, on the flip side, we've got producer surplus. This, as you can probably guess, measures the benefit to the sellers. If a company can make a widget for $5, but they get to sell it at the market price of $8, that $3 difference is their surplus. It's the net benefit they get from making that sale.
So let's just boil it down to the absolute basics. Consumer surplus is the net benefit for the buyers. Producer surplus is the net benefit for the sellers. Simple as that. Two sides of the exact same market coin.
Now, here's where it gets really powerful. When we add consumer surplus and producer surplus together, what we get is a measure of the total welfare created by that market. Think of it like the total size of the economic pie that everyone, buyers and sellers, gets to share.
So if the total surplus is the size of the pie, what do we call a market that bakes the biggest, most delicious pie possible? And for us, the really important question is, what happens when a government rule comes in and actually shrinks that pie?
Well, this brings us to a huge concept: economic efficiency. A market is efficient when it makes that economic pie as big as it can possibly be. It's the point where every single trade that can make someone better off without hurting someone else has already happened. It's peak performance.
And this really sets up the central question for any policy analyst, right? What happens when a government policy, maybe a well-intentioned one like a price control, gets in the way and stops the market from reaching that super efficient point?
The result is this thing called deadweight loss. And this is so important. This is the part of the economic pie that doesn't just go to someone else, it just vanishes. It's gone. It isn't transferred from consumers to producers or the other way around. It's a net loss of value for society as a whole. It's inefficiency you can actually measure.
Okay, theory time is over. Let's put these awesome tools to work. Our first case study, price ceilings. And we're going to use the classic example of rent control. The goal is to make housing more affordable, which sounds great. But what does our new toolkit tell us about what actually happens?
Okay, let's break it down. You set the rent cap below the market price, and right away you get a shortage. More people want apartments than are available. Now, some lucky renters definitely win. They get a cheaper apartment. But the landlords lose revenue, so they have less incentive to offer apartments. This means some potential renters lose out completely. They just can't find a place. And that combination of lost value is the deadweight loss. It's the piece of the pie that just vaporized.
And this table just makes the trade-offs crystal clear. Yeah, the renters who snag a rent-controlled place, they're better off for sure, but the landlords lose. The renters who get pushed out of the market by the shortage, they lose too. And what's the bottom line? The total market suffers a net loss. The outcome is, by definition, inefficient. All right, let's flip the script for our second case study, price floors. This time, we'll use the minimum wage as our example. Here, the government sets a price, a wage, above what the market would naturally set, all with the goal of helping workers.
So, just like a price ceiling creates a shortage, a price floor creates a surplus. And in the labor market, what does a surplus of labor look like? Well, it means more people want to work at that minimum wage than there are jobs available. And we have a name for that surplus: unemployment.
And you know what? The analysis of winners and losers here looks surprisingly familiar, doesn't it? The workers who get to keep their jobs at that higher wage, they absolutely gain. But employers lose because their costs just went up. And sadly, some workers lose their jobs entirely. So once again, the total market has a net loss, a deadweight loss, which makes the policy from a purely economic standpoint inefficient.
So, this begs the question, right? If these policies are inefficient, why in the world do we have them? Well, this brings us to probably the biggest trade-off in all of public policy, this constant tension between efficiency and equity.
I mean, our surplus analysis has given us a really clear answer on one front. From a purely efficiency standpoint, policies like rent control and the minimum wage, they don't pass the test. They create that deadweight loss. They shrink the total economic pie. End of story.
But, and this is a huge but, as our course notes point out, efficiency isn't the only thing we care about. This quote is absolutely key. Efficiency tells us how to make the pie as big as possible, but it says nothing about how that pie should be sliced up. And making the pie bigger and slicing the pie fairly can often be two goals that are completely at odds with each other.
And that, right there, is the answer. We have these policies because, as a society, we might decide that ensuring a fairer outcome, like a minimum standard of living for workers or more affordable housing, is actually worth a little bit of a loss in overall economic efficiency. It's a value judgment, you know? It's not just an economic calculation.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question. It's the question for every policy analyst, and really for every citizen. Knowing there's an efficiency cost, knowing that the pie is going to shrink a little, is that deadweight loss a price worth paying to achieve a social goal we believe is fair and just and right? That is the real conversation these tools allow us to have.